You can call me at 720-386-0513. Thanks. Do we want to take calls?
It'd be kind of hard for you to do everything because if you have one more guy to help. Okay,
Well,
ready? You got 36 seconds.
Okay.
And you're live there.
Okay.
You may want to say hello to your audience.
Oh, hey everybody. Thanks for watching us here on KUHS Denver. Am I supposed to be getting any monitoring feed here? Henry?
If you're all tuned in, I hope you all are tuned in. Of course you're all tuned in. We've got the Shootist coming up right now. 12, right at the noon hour, 12 noon here in Denver, Colorado, 11:59 a.m. Streaming around the world, the Shootist is coming up now. We've got a guest in the house. A couple of guys couldn't make it, so we're going to do it just by yourself. If you want to check it out live video feed, go to www.kuhsdenver.com. That's kuhsdenver.com, and you can see the guest in the studio live. He's going to be doing some good stuff about all the things you need to know about handling guns, gun control, gun laws, everything that. Now, I don't know what he's going to do. He's going to do a lot of things, right?
Absolutely.
So go ahead and introduce yourself, and let's get you going.
Thanks for listening to us here on KUHSdenver.com. This is Riley Bowman. I am from USA Firearm Training, and you guys were so kind to have us on as guests last week, and myself and Jacob, who's my business partner. And so I guess Fred this week couldn't make it, and he gave me a call and said, hey, can you come in and do the show for me? And I said, I'll happily do it, so we'll do the best I can. I thought we were going to have Joe on with me as well. We're working on getting him on. Hopefully we'll get him on patched in through the phone here shortly. But today I wanted to cover, I got some stories and some different things that I thought would be of interest to talk about.
Are you there?
First up, I want to remind everybody, and maybe almost take almost like a brief moment of silence. 1 year ago today, we had the live TV shooting take place in Roanoke, Virginia, on TV station WDBJ. So today marks the 1 year anniversary of that horrific event. Just thought we'd remind everybody and you know, keep those people and their families in your prayers. As a reminder, or you know, in case you weren't familiar with what happened on that day, Allison Parker and Adam Ward were killed. Allison Parker was she was a TV what's the word? She was a reporter for WDBJ. Adam Ward was a cameraman and a former employee of this news station. Came in. Do we have Joe on the line now?
You bet.
Oh, hey, cool, great. Glad we got you, Joe.
How are you, Riley?
I'm very good, thanks, buddy. Glad you got on with us finally. I appreciate it. So we've got Joe Livingston on the line, joining us from. Where are you based in, Joe?
Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth. You know, I'm going to be passing through there next week. Funny enough. So
well, you have to give me a call.
We may have to do that.
Do something.
Absolutely. So I was just mentioning as we started the show that today marks the 1 year anniversary of the WDBJ television station shooting in Virginia. Do you remember hearing about that?
Yes, I'm trying to refresh my memory. On that one.
Yeah. So this was where you had the television reporter Allison Parker and Adam Ward, who was the cameraman.
Right.
They got shot on live TV as they were interviewing. I think it was like a member of the Chamber of Commerce or something like that there locally. And what was his name? Gray, I think was his last name. Or no, not Gray. Marks. Let's see here. I'm looking for his name. No, I got it all wrong here. I can't remember the shooter's name. That's funny. It doesn't really matter. We don't need to give him any publicity for doing what he did. Of course, he committed suicide and had a hold out with the police a little bit later that day. But it was just, I just wanted to remind everybody that today's 1 year anniversary is a horrible thing that occurred, and so there you go. Hopefully, we don't have things like that happen again.
Typical gutless shooter, right? Murderer,
Absolutely.
evil person, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
As soon as trouble arises, they end up taking their own life, or all the more reason to have concealed carry armed citizens everywhere, because the minute seems like someone is in opposition, the threat goes away pretty fast.
Yep.
Either by them taking their own life or getting shot by a good guy. So.
Yep. Yeah, obviously it was so got people's attention because it happened on live TV, and then of course the shooter broadcast it also via video on his phone, and just we've never seen anything like that, and I surely hope we never do. But one of the reasons why I do radio shows like this, including the Shootist, and then now we've got our podcast at USA Firearm Training, the Concealed Carry podcast, is because I really, really, truly want people to be able to defend themselves and do so effectively. So I thought some things we might talk about today, Joe, would be that how to introduce younger children to firearms and families in general, kind of getting the whole family shooting and involved, but specifically maybe focused around children. And also I got another news story that I thought would be interesting to discuss that comes, it affects gunsmiths and other gun dealers pretty a lot. So I thought we would talk about maybe a couple of those things here today. Does that sound all right?
It sounds great.
Cool. So this is a news story I just saw this morning as I got up, and a couple of years ago, I think actually about 2 years ago now exactly, there was the firearms instructor in Arizona, and you probably recall this one where he worked at a gun range called Bullets and Burgers or something like that, and they had a full automatic that they would allow people to shoot. They could rent it for a time, and so this family had their 9-year-old daughter, work with this instructor, and she was given the opportunity to shoot this Uzi. And unfortunately, she couldn't control the weapon, and it kind of went a little bit crazy, and the instructor himself got shot and died. So it's reported today that the family is suing the gun range due to creating an unsafe and dangerous environment. I just wanted to highlight this because, like I said, I think it's a good thing here to talk about how to properly introduce young children and our families to shooting and firearms in general.
I'm not so sure they don't have a case. You brought that up last week, but just handing someone over an Uzi, I don't care what they're paying for rent or whatever. There's got to be a lot more involved than just here you go, here's the safety, and go for it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one thing if you had maybe a 16-year-old or an adult, okay, maybe working right there alongside an instructor learning how to shoot a fully automatic. But I have a 9-year-old son, and actually he's going to be 10 in next week. He's never shot a fully auto, and I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon either.
I haven't shot a fully auto weapon yet.
I have a few times, and they are fun, but I'm not sure how critical it is to introduce a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old to a fully automatic weapon. I believe in baby steps, and you're right. We talked about this last week about starting with baby steps, and an Uzi is not a baby step. Now, I suspect this young gal. I suspect she fired some other guns prior to this, but going to a fully automatic is a kind of a big step, don't you think?
Yeah, and some parenting issues come to mind. Of what the goal even would be. You're not going to purchase one. You're not going to probably own one. I would hope not at 10 years old. And so, I don't even know what the whole purpose of that was, other than what actually probably happened was was a tragedy. And then even in the best case, you're going to scare the crap out of a youngster. You know,
Yep.
that's a lot to handle, and that's where common sense and guns. You know, I don't believe in gun reform of any kind, but common sense with handling of guns, I'm very much in favor for.
Yeah. This article made a good point because it talks about how the family wants to be clear that yes, they are suing the owner or owners of the shooting range. They want them to be held responsible, but they wanted it to be clear that they in no way hold this young 9-year-old girl responsible for. It's actually primarily, I think it was the daughter, the 17-year-old daughter of the instructor that was killed, and she was interviewed on Good Morning America, and she just wanted to make sure it was clear that we want responsibility to be taken for my father's death, but none of that blame is in any way placed on this 9-year-old girl, and they see her as a victim in that as well. And I certainly would agree with that. She's not capable of understanding what happened or what she was doing necessarily. So how do we go about introducing our children and or family members properly to guns? What's your take? Where do you start, Joe?
Well, that's an interesting question. I can tell you what I think the trend is in this country that isn't helping as far as easing kids into appreciating guns, respecting guns, being able to handle and eventually shoot a gun, and then being able to defend themselves later in life because of their previous experiences is we've all, in the past, BB guns, as youngsters, I grew up in the Midwest in a pretty rural community, and I loved it when I first got a BB gun. I don't know how many others out there, or if you, Riley, had one as well.
Oh yeah, more than one.
But yeah, there's paintball guns now, and I haven't done a lot of that, so I'm not going to comment on stuff I'm not educated on. But obviously, I don't think you could probably get hurt doing paintball without the proper protective equipment and all that kind of stuff. But there's ways without the recoil. Remember, we were talking last week about recoil, which is definitely when I taught my daughter to shoot and my wife, recoil is the first thing that's going to be on their mind. What is going to happen when I pull the trigger? So when we start off with airsoft type stuff or BB guns or and then later into firearms with 22 long rifle or something that with low recoil.
Yeah.
I definitely think that's a start. But I want to comment on what I don't think is good for America, and that is the kid using his finger in the shape of a gun, right, and being reprimanded in school for it, or people having water pistols or just squirt guns is what we used to call them, and people freaking out about that. Somebody's got a gun, and brushing guns aside and trying to eliminate anyone from seeing a gun, of course, unless you go to a Hollywood movie where the hypocrites are every movie they make involves guns, but they're all in favor of gun control. But just this freak out. Anyone with a gun is a bad guy, and so when you see a police officer and he's got his pistol holstered, be afraid, be very afraid, be afraid when you see a kid playing cowboys and Indians with a toy gun. That is not the way we need to go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there, because we're raising a generation, or even now maybe almost a couple of generations now, where there's a stigma surrounding guns, and our grandfathers grew up viewing firearms as a tool, right?
Right.
That it was a means to an end, and in a lot of situations that means was to accomplish the end of bringing food for the family.
Absolutely.
I still practice that tradition, I'm going to call it, today. I love hunting, and I've never been much for trophy hunting personally. That's not something that's ever like I have friends and know guys that They've got some impressive trophies, and I honor them and to an extent am jealous of them for that to a degree.
Right.
But my number one focus has always been that I'd love to bring home a little extra meat, throw it in the freezer and let it be there for us to enjoy and to eat. And that's
Well,
how
there's a certain pride factor, don't you feel, Riley? Touch on that when
oh, absolutely.
maybe you're serving something to your family off the grill that you've actually. And let's make no bones about it. Hunting done the right way is a lot of work. And so when you actually accomplish the kill, we're grateful to God for that animal, and grateful for being blessed to be able to take its life. And then there's a certain provider, manly, and women feel this too. I know women. My wife's into hunting. They really love to hunt. There's just this whole sportsmanship, respect. I stalked an animal and then brought it to the table and then fed my family. It's a great, all that's rewarding.
Right. Yeah. It really truly is. That knowing that a person can be self-sufficient to me is one of the biggest boosts to a person's self-worth and ultimately their freedom. Like nothing feels more free than you being able to go and do something, whether even right down to growing your own vegetables in a garden, right? Just being able to do various things that you've got the skills and the ability to be self-sufficient, that you're not totally dependent on the grocery store, to provide you those things. That's one of the, I think, greatest blessings that anyone can have for themselves. Not that this is meant to be a hunting episode today, but the point is that we're
would you not venture to guess? I would that that's where most children, or the ages of 10 to say 16, become acquainted with a firearm via going. I went pheasant hunting with my dad at a very young age. I still, and bird hunting is still a favorite of mine. With shotguns, there's no trophy in that. There's just the work you do on your feet for stalking the bird, and it's. But hunting is going to be where a majority of children come into contact with their first firearm. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. That's certainly one of the ways I was exposed from a young age. Now, my father was actually not much of a hunter himself, but I had family members that were very much into it. And just in general, the shooting sports has been, a hobby, a shared hobby within my family for a long time. And so from an early age, I'll just describe how I got started in firearms. And it did in fact start with, a BB gun or a pellet rifle. Very basic, very little recoil. Ultimately, a very low-powered projectile is fired. I mean, can it be deadly? Yeah, it can be deadly, but it's
Right.
a great place to start for a young one. And then from there, and I was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old being introduced to the BB guns and the pellet rifles. Shortly thereafter, a 22 rifle, typically bolt action, single shot. You open up the action, you drop a little 22 casing in and close it and fire it, and then you do it again, and so and then you grow up, you grow up from there and graduate to something a little larger, maybe a 223 rifle, or something similar, and then eventually I got introduced to handguns. And and the handguns themselves are almost like their own category that requires almost some baby steps. I mean, a person can become very proficient.
That's interesting. I'll let you continue, but saying it wasn't until way later in life that I first owned or fired a handgun.
Yeah,
I grew up around shotguns and rifles so it's almost like handguns are their own little relearn you're great with a long gun, and then you're like, oh, what's this? This is a whole different ball game.
absolutely. You're exactly right in that, and you'd be surprised how often I hear that as an instructor from students. Guys that are 60 and 70 years old that come through a basic handgun course with me, and they tell me I've grown up all my life shooting rifles, hunting, shotguns, all of that. But here you hand them a handgun, and it's totally new to them. I mean, they probably have a pretty good feel for basic handgun or firearm safety rules in general, but actually how to shoot that handgun effectively and accurately, it's almost foreign to a degree. And so I hear that quite often. And so that's why I say, as a child myself, I remember, being, gradually worked up, kind of through the ranks, so to speak, from BB gun up to, a higher powered center fire rifle, quite often, bolt actions, right? Very simple to operate, difficult to, screw up with. Like you don't end up accidentally letting off a whole bunch of rounds automatically, like this poor girl in Arizona did. It's pretty easy to learn to shoot these basic bolt action or similar rifles, and then you get to the handguns. And I feel that it's prudent to start a shooter that has very little handgun experience with a basic 22 caliber handgun, and you kind of repeat that process, small caliber, and you just baby step them their way up. And so you mentioned training your daughter and your wife, or spending some time with them shooting, and I imagine you did something similar. And you mentioned something I thought was really key, that the one thing a lot of newer shooters fear is, and have in common, is that recoil. They know it's coming. They know to expect it. It seems intimidating, and rightfully so it is. I mean, we are handling basically a miniature bomb inside. It's contained in a chamber of a barrel, and within the action of a gun. But it's a little, explosion that takes place there, and it launches a projectile at a very high rate of speed. And so they know to expect that recoil. They know it's, even to some people, is going to feel somewhat painful. But that becomes much easier to break them into that, starting with these smaller caliber weapons, and it becomes so much. If you go from 22 caliber to 32 caliber to 380 auto to 9mm to 40 to 45, kind of in that
40.
It just makes a lot of sense to do that, I think.
Yeah, I have an XT Slim 45 that I personally conceal carry. You go to the range and fire that. I also have a 1911 45. Much easier to fire the 1911 with all that barrel length and weight and metal on it than the XDS 45, which you're firing a weapon at that point. And I doubt that any most women will not like to carry what I carry. It's just not. Accuracy is everything in self-defense. But yeah, the caliber and knowing what you're doing, and yeah, I put that responsibility on the friend, the father, the husband, the brother, whoever. You can search YouTube all day long and find, with lack of a better expression, people getting knocked on their ass as kind of a funny video, which I don't laugh at all, because some a-hole decided to hand his girlfriend a 12 gauge with a 3-inch, Magnum shell in there, and she has no idea what's coming and drops the weapon, which is great. That could go off again, or knocks her back, or, my favorite is, put somebody's back up against a wall and then have them fire something with recoil so you can, break a shoulder, or,
right.
I put that responsibility on if you want to get your youngster involved, then educate yourself and don't hand them anything that will put them in danger.
Absolutely. I mean, and you're right. I've seen many of those videos. There are three that come to mind. Very, like I can just watch them in my own mind play out. There's the classic one. It's been around forever now. Of petite young woman. Her boyfriend's right there. He hands her a 50 caliber Desert Eagle. And she the grip of that thing, it looks like the grip swallows her hands in the grip. Like her hands like barely get around the grip. And she pulls the trigger, and it flies back, and the front sight of the hits her in the forehead. And there's another one of a young lady shooting looked like maybe a 30-06, and probably never done it before, never shot a rifle with a scope, not familiar with the concept of getting bit by that scope on her eyebrow or anything like that, and doesn't have appropriate eye relief off that scope. Her boyfriend puts his shoulder or arm or something against her shoulder, and that thing recoils, and the scope just comes right back and hits her in the in the eye, and
Yeah, that's a bad
uh,
one.
yeah. So I see these, yeah, I'm very familiar with a lot of those, and that is totally inappropriate ways of introducing our wives, our girlfriends, our friends, our children to weapons. Like that, chances are those women will, it's years and years and years before they ever touch a gun again, if they ever touch a gun again.
Yeah,
And what does that
right. It's
accomplish?
the exact opposite of what you're trying to. I mean, go ahead and try that once, and then, I promise you, my wonderful wife Leah, we had dear lease, and we did things right. She's great with a gun, and we started slow, with a 22, and then she was very capable with the 9mm handgun, and then I bought my first AR, and everyone that dogs the AR and has a scary assault rifle, which it's not.
Yeah.
It's a great caliber, and she actually fired it, and with the low recoil and the sheer power, you could see the light in her eyes. It's one of her favorite weapons, with all that, and not having to worry about recoil.
Absolutely.
However, I have a bolt action 30-06 that she knew what was coming, but fired it, and she's like, "No thanks, I don't think I need that one any longer."
Yeah. Yep, I hear exactly what you mean about the AR-15. I haven't got my wife to shoot that one yet, but hopefully here soon. Uh, have you seen the video? There was a guy, because there was I don't remember if it was the New York Times, or there was some reporter or writer that talked about how he had post-traumatic stress syndrome after firing an AR-15. As the gun grabbers love to call them, I mean,
Wow.
the assault weapon, right? The classic
Right.
worldview of the assault weapon, and the AR-15. And this writer says, I have PTSD after shooting this thing. Well, to answer him and counter his point, there was one guy I know that went on YouTube, and he holds up his AR-15, places it on the tip of his nose, the butt of the stock on his nose, and fires it 3 or 4 times, and then pulls it away,
Right.
and no blood, no broken nose. Like, how do you get PTSD? How do you get bruises on your shoulder from shooting an AR-15? And
Right.
once a person's ready to, once you are comfortable that someone is ready to handle a semi-automatic, because of course the thing with a semi-automatic is that, once they fire it once, if they don't know what they're doing and if they're not careful, it's very easy for them to fire again and again and again. And I've had the instance before, and this is a long time ago, and it's I won't give their name because I would hate to embarrass them, but a long time ago I introduced somebody to a gun, and after they fired their first shot with it, they were so excited with it. They were, you could see their face light up. They were just so excited. And of course, we had talked about firearm safety. We talked about the rules. We talked about, making sure to always keep the muzzle of that weapon pointed in a safe direction, all of that. And they fire their first shot with it, and they're so excited. They turn around to look at me like, oh, look at, that was so cool. And here they're turning their whole body and hand with the gun, my direction. I quickly
Right.
stick my hand out and stop them, and so there have been times I've actually, with a semi-automatic, until I'm confident or comfortable with somebody being able to handle it, that I'll just put one round in and say, here, we're going to do this one time, and if that goes well, then we'll put a couple more, and if that goes well, we'll put a few more. And the AR-15, once you're comfortable with somebody handling a semi-automatic, that's a great platform, I think, to learn to shoot on, as far as it's a high-powered center fire rifle, but you're right, it is so low in recoil, felt recoil on your shoulder and everything, that it's just a pleasure to shoot.
And for women, the length of the gun, the stock to, um, from handle grip to end of the stock ratio, the length fits them better. You can,
Mm-hmm.
even with a shotgun, you can hand certain shotguns to a female, and they're so extended trying to get to the forearm grip, right? That it just it firing anything that doesn't fit you, and it's going to end up hurting you. And so not only the low recoil of the AR-15, but the actual, I just think it fits a female or a child better
Yep,
than most long
absolutely.
guns.
No, I mean, especially if you got the 6-position collapsible stock. I mean, you can make that completely, kid friendly. You know, a 10-year-old, 11, 12-year-old, if you're comfortable with your child doing, shooting one of those, uh, you can shorten that right up and it becomes a child-sized stock. An adult, extend it all the way out. I shoot with it in various positions depending on what I'm doing with it. And they're just very versatile, very user-friendly weapons is really what they are. So,
Riley, touch on for the general public to get the misinformation that's been spread about that all squashed. The actual true meaning of the initials AR when we discussed the AR-15 and what it doesn't
right,
mean.
right. Oh, absolutely. On our podcast, we did a whole episode talking about this. It was like an hour and a half long episode, one of our longest ones ever. We just totally break it down. But for those that, I think that was maybe episode 30, if anybody wants to check it out. But for those not familiar with assault weapons or assault rifles, which, by the way, technically the AR-15 is not considered officially by definition any of those. They think the AR in AR-15 means or stands for is an acronym for assault rifle, and it is in fact not. It is an acronym it stands for Armalite Rifle, because you had Eugene Stoner back in the mid to late 50s, who, as he began exploring this concept of this new rifle, and we refer to it now as the Stoner design. The AR-15 platform we refer to as the Stoner design. And he was building the prototypes and everything for the AR-15, what became the AR-15. And at Armalite at the time, which was an firearms manufacturer, the company there is still an Armalite today, but it is not the same company as what existed back in the 50s and 60s. It's gone through a couple of bankruptcies and reorganizations and so forth. But at the time they had I don't know if it was a policy necessarily, but just a practice of naming their various prototypes and guns as they were developed with an AR, and it stood for Armalite Rifle. And they were just so clever with their names that they probably started with AR-1 and then AR-2. Some other guns that Eugene Stoner designed or had a part of was the survival rifle, which many might be familiar with, known as the AR-7. And so that was another weapon developed by Armalite way back when that was given it was the number 7 designation of an Armalite rifle.
Right.
And a few years later, he had the 15th design, which was classified as, and I don't know if it was technically like they literally had 1 through 15, but that's what they classified it as, was the AR-15. It was competing for a military contract. The original gun as it was first produced was a fully automatic, and it was known as the M16, which everybody's familiar with an M16, right? We've got variations of that today, the M4, for instance, being a carbine type version with some updates from the M16. But the civilian model, which was and is and always has existed as a semi-automatic version, is the AR-15. And technically that name is, and actually the rights to that name were sold to Colt. Colt got the big contract to manufacture the M16 and M4s, and still does have a large contract even today. But so it's, not every manufacturer calls theirs officially AR-15 because that name's actually trademarked. But they'll call it an S-15, or Ruger calls theirs, I think, the SR-556 or something like that. But it's all it is a name, right? But people think it means assault.
15.
Right.
Yeah.
But people think it means assault rifle, and it's not. It could be, further from the truth on that, because officially, and this is recognized by the U.S. government, this is recognized by the military, the definition of assault rifle is the big thing, and the big difference between what a true assault rifle is and what we're talking about here, which we call nowadays these AR-15s and such, the modern sporting rifle. Well, the difference between an assault rifle and a modern sporting rifle is the assault rifles have to be fully automatic. And
Exactly.
nothing is really sold to civilians. I mean, it's possible. You can
The,
own a fully
the general
auto,
public
but
without any, right, without an extreme license does not have anything fully automatic, nor can they legally purchase.
right,
So anytime, understand that anytime the media and everyone misconstrues what Riley's saying here as far as assault rifles go, the AR-15, which is the picture they put up all the time of their assault rifle, which is misinformation, is not truly an assault rifle. It's a semi-automatic rifle, just like many long gun semi-automatic deer rifles that are out there. There is no difference, and so it just further moves the lie forward, and people are more confused than they ever have been on what is really anything, right?
right. And I think, regardless of what you actually call it, I think the general, gun grabbing public, including, just citizens that are for gun control, legislators that are for gun control, regardless of what we call it, they still want to outlaw these things and take them away. And so if you go and if you do dig and find, and we could talk about it on the show too sometime in greater depth, but if you find our podcast episode where we talk about this in great depth, we provide a lot of arguments as to why we should have AR-15s to begin with. I'll just throw it out there just real briefly. I think the AR-15 is one of the finest platforms of a weapon for anybody to use for home defense. And I'll give you a very, very clear and a great example of where this came into play. When the rioting was taking place in the St. Louis area, right after the Michael Brown shooting, and you had all the rioting in the streets and stores getting vandalized and looted and burned, and people's homes too, but mostly it was businesses. There were some business owners and just general law-abiding members of the public that wanted to do the right thing, that they armed themselves with, get it, AR-15s and also some AK-47 variants, semi-automatic versions, and quite literally had to stand in front of their stores to keep the looters, moving along. Basically, nothing to see here, move along. You don't want to mess with me, and it was effective. And to me, that is like if you only need one example to prove the case as to why I think modern sporting rifles such as the AR-15 still serve a valid purpose in today's society, it's that one right there. The same was true in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And of course, it's quite well known that the government did in fact go in and seize weapons, which was a huge travesty in of itself. It should not have taken place or occurred. But there were individuals that had to defend their businesses and their property even then, and much in the same way, arming themselves with, you guessed it, AR-15s and similar weapons. That is why we should still have these be a very valid piece of our self-defense strategy in today's world.
Yeah, it goes into play. I get asked a lot, how many rounds does it take to defend yourself? And I always look at them and go, as many as it takes. I'm never going to put a number on that, nor should anyone be asked to put a number on that, because I promise you, there's somebody somewhere multiple times that's had 5 rounds, and unfortunately, they're no longer with us because they wish they had 10.
Yep.
And my right to self-defense supersedes the government's right to limit how I self-defend myself. And it just, we need to start thinking on those terms.
Yep. Yeah. You're exactly right. my answer is very similar to yours when a similar question is asked of me. It's as many as I can carry. It's as many as I need. It
That's
is,
right.
because it's because of this example that I just gave. I mean, we live in a troubled time, is the short of it. I mean, you're in Fort Worth area. Not that long ago, we had this horrific thing in Dallas with all these police
In
officers
Dallas.
getting shot. Um,
And he was highly armed. He had,
he was.
plenty of rounds.
He was.
And the same thing can be in reverse, right? I mean, that sorry individual was going after police officers, and they obviously had the right training and the right amount of. Some of them lost their lives, unfortunately, which is huge tragedy. But they had amount of training and firepower to respond, right?
Yeah.
Picture yourself in a self-defense situation where that same guy, I'm not absolutely positive exactly how many rounds he had on him, but it was a lot. And if you're trying to defend your family or innocent civilians out of a, good Samaritan part of your heart, and you're completely outgunned, you're done. The playing field is not level, which is exactly why firearms are such a great self-defense
Yep. Well,
weapon. Is it allows the weak, to level the playing field.
yes.
Would you agree with that, right?
I've had so many people in wheelchairs, crutches, other various disabilities that I have trained, because they recognize that fact very readily. One man who could barely move, he walked himself from the bus station to where I was holding this class at. And I mean, it was like not even, I mean, it's a snail's pace, just barely shuffling along. And he didn't have to go too far, but still, it probably took him, close to half an hour to get, a short distance from the bus stop to our class. Anyway, he's there and he's telling me about how a strange individual approached him recently and was just acting very unstable and almost, threatening towards him, asking him strange things, wondering about if he had any money on him, stuff like that. And so quite literally, he's like, that day I went to your website and I signed up for a firearms class because, and
That's
sometimes,
outstanding.
and sometimes it takes something like that for somebody to see and recognize, and finally get themselves over that hump, whatever was holding them back from pursuing the training or whatever it is they need. But you're right. I mean, God created men, and Colt, Samuel Colt, made them equal. The gun is the great equalizer,
Right.
for the most part. Now, let me give an example, however, of where it was not so much of an equal battle or fight. A short time ago, a few months ago, and you're probably are familiar with this story, Joe. In Houston, there was a shooting that took place, and in that shooting, there was a concealed carrier, somebody that was permitted, carrying concealed.
Right.
He was in the area. His name is Byron Wilson, and I've talked about him before in our podcast multiple times. And I've asked people to go to his GoFundMe page and donate to his cause, because Byron Wilson is a hero. He was not able by himself to stop this shooter, but he did draw his weapon, and he did give probably an opportunity for other people to get away, or at least distract the shooter for a time, long enough to save some other people's lives. And unfortunately, in the process of Byron trying to do this, he himself was shot multiple times and wounded severely, and may not ever walk again. Although he's trying hard, and I think he's making some progress. He's got a huge amount of medical bills and things. But here's my point: that shooter had an AR-15 or something similar. Byron had a basic, semi-automatic, I believe it was a semi-automatic handgun that he was carrying
Yeah,
concealed.
he never got a round off.
He didn't,
Byron did.
unfortunately. Yeah. But like I say, would I have liked that to have turned out differently? I would. But I do believe that he provided an opportunity for some people's lives to be saved. because this shooter seeing that, wow, here I've got somebody with a gun that I need to, like, it takes his focus away from other victims. And Byron is a brave man for doing what he did. But that is an example, too, though, of where it was kind of an unmatched fight, because a semi-automatic carbine rifle against, your little, even if it's a Glock, 17-round Glock, or a 1911, it doesn't really matter. You're really outmatched in that sort of battle, head to head. So if we were to outlaw AR-15 rifles, would that mean that we would see a stop to these mass shootings, being committed with AR-15 or similar rifles? No, because history has shown and history has proven. We've seen it right in, France, in Paris, France of last year, a place where semi-automatic or automatic weapons is basically outlawed. Yet these guys were able to somehow get a hold of them and commit that atrocity where, hundreds were, well over 100 were killed right there in Paris, France. So just because we outlaw these things doesn't mean, we're going to stop from seeing these things occur. And I just think it's all the more argument as to why, why should me as a law-abiding citizen have my right to a certain weapon be taken away, when in fact that the adversary that I may have to go up against might have something like that because he doesn't care what the law says.
Right. By limiting the innocent, you're making them less safe.
Absolutely. And
you're not making the world more safe. You're limiting only those of us that adhere and frankly don't want to go to jail and abide by the laws. You're limiting us and in essence making us less safe.
Yeah.
The sitting duck effect.
It hurts us, the citizens, more than it hurts anybody else. Here's an interesting thing too. I work as a volunteer, part-time for a law enforcement agency. It's a wonder. I love doing it. I have the pleasure of knowing and working with and training with, and sometimes even training, law enforcement officers. And the thing that I think is so interesting is here you have these law enforcement officers, and I'll bet it's true even in your case down there in the DFW area, Joe. The law enforcement officers in general, I mean, the better part of the majority of law enforcement officers support citizens' rights to defend themselves, including with the use
job easier.
of a firearm.
Most of them will tell you.
That's right. They understand that having, law-abiding and responsibly armed adults in their communities ultimately makes those communities safer. And they get it. And they're the ones that are on the streets. They see it. They're the ones that respond. They get it. And it's interesting to me that we have a very clear and direct attack against law enforcement in this country, like we just did in Dallas a short time ago. And yet still, you don't, I mean, yes, there are some law enforcement, I mean, of course, that will say, we need to do more about guns. But the overwhelming majority of them are not in that boat. And I think it's interesting and very telling of where you've got law enforcement officers that were very directly assaulted and attacked and killed, and they're not out calling for these guns and weapons to be taken away. They understand what it means to have responsibly armed citizens in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, they don't. Law enforcement is not going to politicize, right? That's what the politicians and the media do.
Yeah.
So you don't see them making this about the problem being guns. They deal with this day in and day out in their lives, and things that aren't even brought to the news attention, and they realize that the problem is the person on the end of that weapon. And the only time I don't know that I've ever seen an officer making it about gun control unless they've had Obama standing in front of them and putting that in their ear.
Yep.
They deal with the real issues, and they're not going to politicize a tragedy. They're going to, unfortunately, tragedies are going to happen, and I don't care what government, what country, what city, what state, what continent thinks they have the greatest laws ever written. Tragedies are going to continue to happen, and evil will continue to exist no matter what laws we create.
That's
Do you
right.
agree with that, Riley?
Oh, absolutely, I do. I do. It's I was just thinking too, the few law enforcement that you do see that will come out and publicly say, we need more gun control. It's almost always police chiefs of major metropolitan areas and cities in this
That
country.
are up for election
And,
in a Democratic
and exactly, they themselves are politicians. But the
right.
the worker bees, the beat cops, the detectives, the guys that really go out and do the real policing work, they get it. They really get it. So, kind of back to where we started. We talked, we started out, I asked about, where do we start young children and our family members with getting trained? I think we made that point pretty clear that it's all about baby steps and doing it appropriately. This unfortunate thing that happened in Arizona 2 years ago with this 9-year-old girl and the fully auto Uzi should never have happened. I'm sure a lot of people see and recognize that now. I'm sure there's people too that would argue against me and say, no, it's a parent's right to choose a child, whether a child can shoot something like that or not. Well, you know what? I agree with you on that too, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna agree that it is your right, but I'm not gonna agree that it's necessarily the right course or way of going about it. So baby steps, and we got up to assault weapons and, or at least so-called assault weapons, or modern sporting weapons.
I steered you directly off course.
No, 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 no. This is good conversation. Because I think the point that we take away from this, and this is my point as to why I'm summarizing it, is that it is all about baby steps, and we need to train our young ones and our family members up appropriately from level to level to level. But the modern sporting rifle, the AR-15, and similar weapons make fantastic weapons for shooting and training when someone's ready, because they are so easy to do so. They are so easy to shoot. They're recoil friendly, and so that's my point here. I do, my almost 10-year-old son, he has not shot the AR-15 yet, but a month or two ago, he did shoot a 9mm carbine, Caltech 9mm carbine of mine for the first time, and he did a marvelous job with it. Of course, I was right there, real close, making sure he was, doing everything properly. But I've spent time with my son, a considerable amount of time, going through these baby steps, and he got to a point. I said, I think you're ready to try this 9mm semi-auto, and he rocked it. He did a great job. And so, maybe not this year, but next year I might pull out the AR and say, all right, son, here you go. I know people that start their kids even earlier, but this is what I've decided for my family and what is best suited for my children. So I'm going to shift gears here, though, because I want to make sure we leave enough time to discuss this, Joe. I think we got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So recently I saw a news story that is very concerning to me, although not necessarily surprising. And I think if we get who in office, that would be Ms. Clinton, that we wouldn't necessarily see any changes or anything done
The
differently.
devil herself?
So here's the news story I'm referencing. Recently, the Obama administration decided to change some regulations, most specifically Department of State regulations. Now that's interesting, right? Because Hillary once was the head of the Department of State.
Right.
And this was done through the Directorate of Defense Trade Controls. Now, that department or that piece of regulation, they basically are responsible for setting a lot of the rules and regulations dealing with the importation of, exportation of, and also manufacturing of firearms and ammunition products. Okay.
Right.
So on July 22nd of this year, they changed the definition of manufacturer. And the way that changed is that now many of your kind of tinkering gunsmiths, as I call them. The guys that they're in their basement, they're in their garage. They're well skilled and trained, in many cases licensed gunsmiths that do a lot of side work, and it's part of their income. It's part of their living. I know guys that build AR-15 rifles as a hobby. They're licensed to do so. But here's the key. So the regulation was changed to broaden this definition of manufacturers. And what that means is that potentially now a lot of these small gunsmiths and small gunsmithing shops are now going to be officially classified as such. For any little, they do some little modification to a gun. Like you take your 1911, let's say,
Right.
Joe, and you say, "Hey, Mr.
Put different
Gunsmith."
dovetail sights in it, or yeah.
Exactly. Or I want you to mill out, on the top here, so I can put a red dot on the top of my gun or something like that. And because of that work that they would do, they would potentially then be classified as a manufacturer, which for them to do so and continue to do so legally requires an annual registration and a fee of
I'm going to guess there's some
$2,250.
money involved.
Exactly.
How many dollars?
To the tune of $2,250.
So, no way. The government is actually going against the Constitution by changing vocabulary definitions and basically pricing someone out of business.
Exactly. Isn't that crazy? And so I wanted to bring it up here on this show today because in case we have any listeners that haven't heard about this, like I said, this happened on July 22nd. That's over a month ago now. I don't know. I haven't seen anything that says exactly, if there's a date that this officially goes into effect. I haven't seen a lot of follow-up to this quite yet, but I'm keeping my ear, to the ground here on this, and we'll be following very closely. I just wanted to point that out and make sure people are aware of that, and especially as we are in an election year now, it's not just about the, in-your-face gun control regulation that we need to always be concerned about. It's also about, the executive branch that has a great deal of power in as far as how they define things and how they regulate things. And they can, in effect, have gun control instituted in very backhanded, under the table, backroom type sort of ways and deals.
It's interesting, and everyone needs to be aware that this election tends to be, you constantly want to talk with your friends and family and people on both sides of the argument. Hopefully everyone's on the same side of the argument that Democrats are no good for our Second Amendment. But you think this is a presidential race, and it's really, this is a congressional election this year. And the House for sure is very important this year, and the Senate.
Mhm.
So when you go to the ballot box, let's really do your homework on which party is if you believe in the Second Amendment, is for preserving the Constitution and your rights. Because as Riley just stated, there's so much going on. It wasn't too long ago, Riley, they were they have put some ammunition manufacturing out of business.
Yeah.
Magpul, I don't believe, is in Colorado any longer.
Nope.
Because
they're now
were
in
regulated
Texas
to leave the state
and
to
Wyoming.
get their business done.
Yep.
What's that? To Wyoming?
They're now in Wyoming and Texas. They moved all their operations
Right.
and split them between Texas and Wyoming.
Right, and personally, as an American citizen and a constitutionalist, I don't believe it's right, legal or otherwise, for the government to monetarily shut down an industry so that this right that was given to us by our founders goes away. It's really underhanded. It's happening every day. We need to join forces with ammunition manufacturing and pro-Second Amendment people and pro-firearms manufacturers and stand beside them, because they're they don't make enough money to stay in the fight and stay in the business. The profits are done. And when we start, everyone knows what an ammunition shortage there was when the assault rifle ban was coming back up into Congress, you know, and people bought a 223 ammunition, 22 ammunition, every caliber they had. When they heard that FEMA, you know, was stockpiling, the Department of Homeland Security is stockpiling ammunition faster in the billions of rounds, right? And when we're all guessing what's that for, when it becomes too hard for us to have firearms and ammunition to defend ourselves, we're going to be in real trouble.
You're absolutely right on that. So that's why I brought it to, you know, the forefront of our minds and hopefully to people's attention right now. You made a good point. It's a congressional election year. We've got senators up for election and re-election, congressmen and women. It's not just about the president either, because keep in mind, who is it that confirms Supreme Court, you know, nominations? And we just had Scalia pass away. We have not replaced him yet. And it's not just about the president. It's also about the Senate, you know, who is going to actually have a lot of the final say in who replaces Justice Scalia. And that will have a huge impact as well. So just a kind of, you know, we're basically ready to wrap it up here. One last final note, and, you know, bringing it to people's attention and making sure it's in the front of your mind. I know we got, you know, some difficult decisions to make this year as far as candidates, but look carefully, look at all the options, look at what they stand for, their policies, and let's hope that the next 2 years, the next 4 years, the next 8 years, hopefully can go differently as far as a lot of gun-related laws and regulation. So, Joe, it's been a pleasure, you know, having you on with me on the Shootist today. It's
Likewise.
Yeah, this has been good. We had a lot of good discussion on some really key and important topics here, I feel. I hope it's been of value to the listeners, too.
Yep. I just want to, one last note, you know, freedom isn't free. It's not just the guys in our military that have to fight for it. We fight our own. We fight for our own liberties and freedom every day, whether we know it or not.
Yep, exactly right. Well said. Thanks again for your time, Joe. So this is Riley here with the Shootist, KUHSdenver.com. Thanks for joining us. Take care. Train hard. Be safe.
See you next week.
And that concludes the Shootist show from, that's right, coming on from 12 to 1 p.m. We're going to get on with the programming now. Hope you enjoyed that Shootist show. Great show. You can catch the entire show on www.kuhsdenver.com and check it out. He's going to say goodbye for now. If you're watching visually, he'll say goodbye to you right now. So goodbye for now. You'll have a link up on Facebook or Pinterest, Twitter, wherever he launches this, there'll be a link coming for this show. So stick around, check it out. See y'all later. Get ready for the next show. Coming up at 3 o'clock, we've got DJ Razor doing the block party. You know you like just Give me 1 second, Paul.